It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. A beautiful day in the neighborhood. Would you be mine? Would you be mine? I've always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. Always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you, so let's make the most of this beautiful day. Now we're together, we might as well say, won't you be, please won't you be my neighbor. We've got some new people right before the 4th of July that moved in right across the street. We didn't think that house was going to sell because of how high the price was on it. But it sold. Now, I don't know what they paid for it. I didn't look it up. Congratulations to them. The original price tag was $333,000. Now, I have said in previous lives, I don't know their backdrop or anything like that. Before you spend that kind of money on a house, invest it in some units that will pay for your house. Property units, apartment units. Even a house has like maybe 10 or more individual rooms. I know people who have lived in those type of places. And they've got like a community shower. And each of the people in the room pay a price. So just explore your other options. I bet you that kind of money could buy a beautiful house somewhere overseas, outside of the United States of America. If chosen to go that route. We got a lot of ground to cover today. And we're going to start on day 28th with some breathing and then welcome those in the chat. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on in the community, continuing from yesterday, and then we'll get into the steak versus the vegetables, the salads, and the side dishes. And that'll be the book that I'm reading out of here in a moment. Whew. Deep breath. All right. Let's see who we've got in the chat. Knob Slayer -gaming -1. All right. Hello, sweetness. I am a boy and my name is Sadiq. Nice to meet you, Mr. Sadiq. Oh, at Makana, it's a beautiful name, Makana, Leikahale, Leikahale 420. 420, you be chiefing. Puff, puff, pass. You gonna pass it through the screen today? I ain't smoked in a while, but if you're gonna pass the 420 through the screen, I might take a couple of puffs and send it right on back, okay? All right. Now, Proverbs 3:16 is the scripture for today. All right. The Art of Parlaying. She looks at land and buys it, and with money she has earned, she plants a vineyard. Good News Translation. She considers the field before she buys or accepts it, expanding her business prudently. With her profits, she plants fruitful vines in her vineyard. Amplified Bible. She picks out a field and buys it. She plants a vineyard from the profit she has earned. God's Word Translation. Normally, I don't look at these scriptures until I talk with y'all. Normally. I remember the first time I bought my house. And one of my friends had just bought a house off of Martin Luther King Jr. Street near the downtown area. And she talked about how much she loved her house. She's an older lady, former 304. And we had a lot of discussions. And I said, you know what? I was living out at Carlton Apartments at that time, and working for a doctor's office, orthopedic surgeon. And before that, I was living out east Indianapolis off of like places like Post Road and things of that nature. I had never really ventured to the west side or northwest side of Indiana, in the Indianapolis area. I had gotten to know her because I ended up taking care of her at that time as a home health aide. And I would have to go to her apartment at that time, which she lived near before she got her house. And she had had knee surgery. And a lot of important lessons I learned from this older lady. And I got to know the area after she got her house. I went out there. I seen what I liked out there. I moved into the apartments. And then after she got the house, I said, you know what? I've never had a house. I might want that experience. So I did. I went ahead. I bought the house. HUD funding helped at that time. I didn't have to put more than a $500 deposit down at closing. And then once I closed on the house, I got my $500 retainer back. This is out when they had, I want to call it the Homestead Act. If you spent up to a certain amount of money, you could get up to $8,000 back as a tax cut on your home. So the home was listed for $80,000. I believe the price I paid on it was $77K. By the time I did, while I had the house, I had to learn a few things about the house because I didn't know a thing about houses. As soon as I moved into the house, the hot water went out a couple months later. I said, oh, this is nice. This is right around the time that my job had told me they were going to let me go because I could either stay and transition to a new position, or I was working in the healthcare field and I switched from home health aide to doing customer service for one of the big insurance giants. I could either switch to a new position and or I could go ahead and I could take the severance pay and the unemployment. So I took the severance, nice severance package. I went ahead, I took the unemployment. I was unemployed for maybe like a year and a half. I decided immediately when I did that if I was going to do that, I would go back to school. So I had already had my associates in applied science for health claims examination, which is where you do medical coding. ICD-9, HISPICs, medical billing, things of that nature. I said, well, let me go on back to school. This is a great time. Y'all gonna pay for it. This is nice. Let me just go ahead and get my bachelor's. So I went ahead and I got my bachelor's in business administration during that time while they gave me my severance and while I did unemployment. And so at the house, I was also reading up on real estate, and my friend gave me this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Again, I knew nothing about a house. I've got stuff going out in the house, knew nothing about having insurance for the house. And it's not a young house, it's an old house. I want to say the house was built in 1962. It was a three bedroom, 1.5 bath. Less than, I want to say, 1,200 for the house, and then the acres was like 0.18. Well, I had to learn real quick with no extra income coming in, and it's just me, and that unexpected things happen at the house. Lots of unexpected things happen. I said, oh, reading that book, I was like, this is not an asset. I thought this was an asset. Nah, baby, this is a liability, clearly. So I went ahead and I said, well, I don't know any African-American bed and breakfasts here in the Indianapolis, Indiana area. And I had just got an invitation from Airbnb at the time. They had just started out. I said, well, I can make this work. So my first, I went ahead, I got my master bedroom together and the smallest room in my house together. And I went ahead and got the rest of the rooms together except the middle room, because remember, I'm in school full time at this time. And I said, let me go ahead and get my website together. And this house is going to make me some money. This house is about to pay some bills. And it did. I got my first clients. They were awesome. They bought one of my first books that I wrote. The people that came in there, the first book I wrote was called Love Funk. Love is spelled the regular way. Funk is spelled Phunk. Had it published through Arthur House. And then I learned as I go, because I had no clue how to run a bed and breakfast. What was entailed, what was required, what the pricing was. I didn't know you priced up for certain events, priced down if you weren't on certain events. I had to learn everything from scratch, but I was determined that I was not going to be in a house where 2 to 3 months later, the water heater, do you know how much a water heater costs? Breaks down, and that I've got to take out a credit card to pay for it. I don't own any credit cards. So, not one. Haven't owned a credit card for years. And based off my last job, who was one of my last major jobs in the insurance company, one of the things he talked about was not having a credit card and saving your money. So she looks at the land and she buys it, and with money she has earned, she plants a vineyard. So I ended up, eventually it got to the point that I was in so much demand that I did go ahead, I got the second bedroom together. I made it, the first bedroom and the third bedroom had a similar theme. The second bedroom I had was Jamaican themed. It had like the hibiscus flowers. It had like international money from overseas, from places I had visited, like the Bahamas, because I was a former military brat. I did a lot of traveling when I was growing up, lived in a whole bunch of different places. And then I only lived 10 minutes from the Indianapolis 500 Speedway track. And I was only 20 minutes from downtown, the main heart of downtown. And if you didn't drive those 20 minutes and you wanted to catch the bus, which is right down the street, a brief 10-minute walk, you could just get on the city bus and it would take you 45 minutes to get downtown. So people love the proximity to where they had to go and the cost of what it was I was charging at the Airbnb for those 3 rooms. I was always booked during the Gen Con, Indianapolis 500. If I want to call it the Key Club. If the Key Club came to town, I was sold out. Motorsports, I was always sold out when they held the motorsports. So I knew when different things were coming to town, and I would plan accordingly to price for those things. The second people I had that paid off that lovely credit card bill for the for me getting the water heater was when people came in for the Super Bowl and Madonna was the featured artist at that time. It got to the point I was no longer sleeping in my house in the 3 main bedrooms because I was sold out. I started to make up the garage as a bedroom, and before I sold the house, I had already laid down the carpet in the garage after doing my first listening party for Supreme Rain Love Redefined. I loved gardening, so the first few years of the house, I didn't do any gardening, but the last few years of the house, I did gardening. I liked spending time gardening right after I had my deck made. I liked spending time outside, planting the seeds and watching everything grow when spring was coming around. So, the art of parlay. Taking what you have, seeing it, buying it, even if you don't know what you're doing with it, which can happen in other areas of your life, such as music, poetry, acting, comedian, painting. Yes, you look at it, you buy it, you plant the vineyard. You get to know what it involves hand-on in regards to that house and all the intricate details in between so that it can do what it needs to do for you to get where you need to go for your next evolution. All right. Okie dokie. That's out of 40 money scriptures. When I sold the house with the deck, sold close to 120. The house is now priced at almost $200,000. Okay? All right. Didn't know I was going to be sharing that lesson today, but based on that scripture, that felt relevant. Now, I did, sometimes if I don't mention something in a live, I may think of some things afterwards. Just as an example, we did the live the other day of the prosperity tassel. So, and I said I had different colors. If you listen to that live, I had different colors and bought them in bulk. Well, I didn't go through all the colors right then and there. It was a quick session. I want to say it was less than 15 minutes. And, but I did go back in regards to color magic, and I listed what all the different colors of the prosperity tassel were. I made sure to include pictures of the prosperity tassels that I had. Same day, I went ahead and I made sure to list on my Amazon affiliate page different types of prosperity tassels, just for prosperity tassels. And then I also went ahead and I put witch kits, incense kits, sage kits, essential oils, things needed or that you may want or desire for your altar work, because this is altar work. That was on day 26 for 40 money spells. But yeah, if I think of something after Alive, it would be included in my Substack, or because I've been posting the same thing on my Skip page for people who have started to their businesses and have done the shadow work and are putting things together. If you are, most businesses I know love finances and getting money for their businesses. So there's multitude of ways you can do it, and grants is one of them. I also discussed other ways that you can get money for your business. Hold on. That was on day 23, 24, 23, everything paid and paid off. 24, sure feels good to be rich. And I also made sure to talk about not just you having your own business, but the kids can be employed as well. I mentioned that I would go back, yesterday I mentioned that I would go back to where we talked about different terminologies in the Bible. I talked about scripture sorcery during spell 22, freedom from forgiveness. All right. I'm going to check the chat, and we're going to get started with today's lesson. Oh, I included some pictures of my cauldron on there as well, because witches have cauldrons. And brooms. We have cauldrons and broomsticks. Okay. Let's see. If you're new, welcome to the channel. Appreciate having you here and tuning in. All right. Oh, this one's going to be deep today. All right, let's see who we got. All right. We've already addressed the chat. Okay. We just entered 2 Kings verse 1 today with the coven, because I just listened to last night's session before our live here today. So I have not, I've summarized it. I've listened, I've summarized. I've done some mental gymnastics. but I have not written anything out for this live. We're going to go based off of the last live and move to the solution that I discussed that we were going to get into today in regards to the lady who was in transit surrounded by the patriot people. Okay? All right. Now, I wrote something on women are often out of marriage, but that is a topic for an entirely different day. Oh, reminder. I said I was going to lower some prices on my products, and I did. I most certainly did. And those prices are not available on Etsy. They would be available solely through the Skip platform. So once you have registered with the Skip referral link, it'll take you to the platform. You'll register your email, and then you can explore the platform. And then if you type in, then you'll be able to go to my page and look at what I have for my blogs. They call them blogs. BLOG is what they call them. So, yeah. Laying the first stones is where we left off yesterday at 11:50. I put PM down. I know that's wrong. Only thing I saw at 11:50 PM was the back of my eyelids. So I meant 11:50 AM. All right, we are no longer looking at an internet trend. Just a small recap. We discussed what happened, how she may have felt, emotional intelligence. We talked about a shirt. We talked about people's reactions at the time. We did not know the black girl's name in transit. With the patriotic people. I still don't know it now, but that didn't mean I didn't look. She may perhaps want to remain anonymous, even though she has a historical picture now. We are no longer looking at an internet trend. We are looking at a repeating loop where the vulnerable are left exposed on their daily commute, and their survival depends entirely on whether a camera is present to witness the technology at the library went out, and it just stayed out for a few minutes, and it just came back. When I used to attend sessions with Rev Valerie Love, and the internet would act stupid, or we couldn't connect, or it was acting strange, that meant we were getting into some serious things, and the energy or the frequency around us was letting us know that we were about to talk about some pretty deep things. So let's go. All right. Physical environmental danger, relying on public infrastructure that allows organized hate groups to corner undefended citizens. The surveillance, dependency, safety should not depend on a bystander holding a smartphone. We talked about possibilities that could have happened, that did not happen, and we are thankful that they did not happen, and that there was no, that other people were there, and that there was no, I want to call them blank spots or anything happening. Okay? So we're going to strip away everything false and confront the absolute reality of the final screenshots that I looked at. The false safety of digital projection. So in one of the comments, it said the young lady's not alone. The Almighty God is with her. The ancestors protected her, and she wasn't afraid. She could have dialed one number. Stripping the falsehood. The comments project an armor onto her because the alternative, admitting she was entirely physically alone, unarmed, and unprotected by any worldly institution, is too terrifying to face. Saying she wasn't afraid or that she possessed a magic number to dial deletes the biological fact of a human being in deep survival shock, holding her composure because any sudden movement could trigger physical violence. Let's take a look at some things. The historical rhyme, Elizabeth Eckford and Ruby Ridges. Ruby Ridges and Elizabeth Eckford in Little Rock, Arkansas, 1957. The face of Elizabeth Eckford remained entirely neutral while an angry mob yelled and jeered behind her. Stripping the falsehood, history is not just rhyming for entertainment. The mechanism has not changed in 70 years. Whew, honey. The strategy of white nationalists intimidating, or I should say white consciousness, relies on the exact same spatial dynamic, surrounding a singular isolated black body in a public space to assert dominance. Colonizer consciousness. The neutral face of the passenger in 2026 is the exact same survival inheritance as Elizabeth Eckford's neutral face in 1957. It is a forced stoicism because the system leaves the body completely undefended. The threat of escalation versus invisible hate. Thoughts like, well, if she wanted a civil war, all they had to do was anything to her, they wouldn't make it back there. For years, this behavior has been socially unacceptable and invisible, but now the internet both exposes and encourages it. Stripping the falsehood, the internet threats that this is a theoretical flashpoint for a macro-level conflict, civil war, completely ignoring the micro-level trauma of the individual woman sitting in that seat. The base reality is that a threat is no longer hidden in secret meetings. It is organized, uniformed, and utilized public transit infrastructure to broadcast its presence using the internet as an amplification loop to spread intimidation far beyond that to attempt to spread intimidation far beyond the single train car. All right. Solving the problem realistically. We have to strip away the comforting lies that she wasn't scared, that she was magically protected, or that this was just a rare viral photo. The problem is laid bare. The system leaves Black women physically exposed to organized intimidation on a regular daily commute. Realizing, dismantling the illusion of isolation, recognizing that the isolation of the passenger is what the mob feeds on. True defense requires physical community networks that ensure no one navigates hostile logistical coordinators alone, anchoring uncompromised space, building parallel structures, logistical, financial, and spatial where community safety is entirely self-determined, self-funded, and self-defended, removing the dependency on public infrastructure, if possible, that permits this harm. I can tell you from experience, riding in on the bus, on the city bus, is totally different than riding in an Uber. Just because, and I feel more comfortable in an Uber. At the same time, that doesn't mean that situations don't occur in those Ubers. That's a whole different discussion for another day. As far as topics, conversations, things carried, and I'll give an example. A gentleman picked me up. I had ordered a shared ride. A gentleman picked me up, Caucasian gentleman, nice gentleman. Got in the vehicle. I said, it's a shared ride. He says, oh no, I don't do shared rides. And he explained to me why. He says, I went ahead and I picked up someone, and it was a ride share. I picked them up first, 2 people. He said they were in the back and they were rolling up in the back. He said, that's all right. I don't mind it. I've had many different types of people in my car. I don't mind that. He said, but it was the last ride share I did. He said the next person that came was a lady, Spanish descent, and she had a newborn baby with her. She was going to get into the vehicle. She was already skeptical. She was taking the baby to a doctor's appointment. Well, that's a little bit of conflict right there. So we're not about to get in. If I was a mom with a newborn baby, I'm not about to be sitting with these strangers rolling up in the back. Y'all know what rolling up is. Most of you anyway. Hopefully you know what that is. Hopefully I don't have to spell that out for you. But it does involve some Mary Jane. If you don't know what Mary Jane is, go listen to the song Mary Jane. Okay? All right. So, I believe it's safer, but that does not make it absolute in regards to safety in terms of how you think about safety. Another example, an Uber driver had a passenger following another passenger call them, had the Uber company call them because what the passenger had in the package that they were delivering, they went to a neighborhood that they probably should not have been in after dark. We have to use discernment. Well, whatever was in that package left a reeking smell in the car. And even though the Uber driver didn't do those kind of things, you have to use caution. They didn't already pick the person up and everything. You don't know if the other person is you have it in your car, if they pack it or not, or anything else. So at that time, they're just worried about getting to their next destination safely to make whatever money they need to make, and whatnot. But the person was like, I'm not going to be able to deal with this and this smell, and called Uber on them. And they had to do some heavy cleaning on the car before they did any more rides, after explaining what had happened in the ride beforehand. So everything's not always 100. Situations will arise, and you just have to use discernment in the situations that you are in. Okay? All right, so we have looked at most of the angles, processed commentary, called out the gaslighting, and traced it back to the foundational psychological text. And so, looking at the baseline of truth, we're going to look at next steps in regards to solutions. All right. So, on a train trap, doesn't have a digital platform, doesn't have asset strategy. She's not thinking about global framework. She's a Black woman trapped in a metal box, moving underground, surrounded by an organized crime of men who want her demographic eliminated. We are fighting a mindset at the absolute baseline of reality to look at what survival and defense look like in that exact moment of confinement. The reality of the trap. When a person is trapped in a public space, the mindset of dominance manifests as a physical wall. The mob uses their numbers to cut off the exits. They use their mass to remove their humanity, make it impossible to appeal to them as individuals. They create a high-stress environment where a single wrong move, a single reactive word, or an eye contact challenge can instantly escalate into physical violence. The bodily toil. Survival in this trap requires a massive silence expenditure of energy. The body goes into a freeze and vigilant stage, holding the breath, locking the jaw, keeping the eyes forward, and processing a massive surge of adrenaline while remaining completely still. If the problem is a Black woman trapped and undefended on her daily commute, solving the problem from the ground up means building real-time physical interventions. We have to answer the question, how does she get off the train if needed safely? The mob only targets the isolated. Their consciousness is entirely dependent upon finding a lone, undefended target. The baseline solution to a physical trap is collective presence. The execution, it means establishing organized, localized community networks, people who travel the same routes, coordinate transit schedules, and intentionally occupy space together. If 5 or 10 people from the community are riding that same car, the spatial dynamic changes instantly. The illusion of the mob's total control is broken simply because she is no longer alone in the room. Do y'all remember when we were boycotting? Well, folks before us were doing the boycotts, and they would carpool. That's what that reminds me of. De-escalation and tactical awareness. Carpool, kind of like Lyft or Silver Pool or whatever you want to call pool, some kind of pool. Okay. De-escalation and tactical awareness. When trapped, traditional aggression plays into their hands, giving them the pretense they want to inflict harm. The execution. The basic defense is collective vigilance. It means bystanders in the space refusing to look away, recording quietly from multiple angles to create an undeniable record, and actively moving to sit next to near the isolated person to form a physical buffer. It is about creating a protective perimeter inside the box until the doors open. That does not mean behind with your face hidden. All right, secure independent transit courier control. Relying entirely on public infrastructure leaves the vulnerable exposed to whoever boards the train. The execution. The ultimate baseline solution is creating and funding independent, community-vetted transit options. Ensuring that women navigate the city have direct access to trusted, safe transit networks where the drivers are verified allies. Environment is entirely controlled, removes the vulnerability of the public trap altogether. We aren't teaching the person in the chair how to fight a global matrix. We are mapping how the community surrounds, buffers, and extracts her from the trap safely. One of the questions I asked is, why didn't the conductor put them off the train? And that's because it's a public transit system and bound by a rigid systemic shield, First Amendment protections, and legal standard of public space. Operational and bureaucratic reasons. First Amendment legal boundaries. Public transit agencies like the Washington, D.C. metro system, where this occurred, and government-operated entities, because they are state-run public resources, they are legally restricted from denying services to individuals based purely on their political beliefs, ideology, or standard clothing, even if those views are explicitly white narcissist, or neo-fascist. I remember before COVID, where you weren't allowed to wear a mask in stores or anything else. Maybe we need to get back to that. The standard of peaceful expression. Law enforcement and city transit authorities generally categorize these tightly scripted uniform flash mob movements as peaceful First Amendment activity unless the physical crime, property damage, or verbal threat is actively occurring. In statements regarding these marches, local police departments explicitly note their commitment to tracking the group while protecting the right to peacefully express their views in public zones. There was an incident that occurred in Philadelphia, and I want to say it was, I'm not sure if it was 2024 or 2025. It was I want to say it was a 40-minute train ride where a black woman was harassed and people watched and took pictures, but they never intervened. I'd have to look that up. Lack of authority, security. Train conductors are operations employees responsible for navigating the vehicles. They didn't put them folks off either. Train coordinators are operations employees responsible for navigating the vehicles, not law enforcement. They have no personal authority to physically remove or bar hundreds of coordinated individuals from a train car without transit police intervention. And transit police will not intervene unless a specific transit code violation or physical altercation breaks out. This is the ultimate loop of the systemic mindset. The system legally treats a massive coordinated group of masked white nationalists boarding a public train as a routine protected transit of citizens, entirely ignoring the immediate psychological trap and physical intimidation it inflicts on a lone passenger. This is America. Don't catch me. Don't catch me. Ooh, baby. This is America. All right, let's talk about it. The core movement of consciousness. I wrote something called the Temple Architecture Method. It is a comparative symbolic framework for reading consciousness, institutions, psychology, and transformation through sacred architecture. It holds multiple traditions in parallel: Kabbalah and the Tree of Life, Tarot as archetypal psychologically, Haitian Vodou and Loa, Lukumí, Santería and the Orishas, comparative mysticism, and sacred cosmology. These are not treated as identical systems. They are treated as distinct sacred language describing reoccurring patterns of consciousness across culture, history, and lived experience. It's not prediction. It's not discernment. It's not doctrine. This is a pattern recognition of the human sacred imagination. Methodological rules of interpretation. Non-equivalence rules, Kabbalah, Voodoo, Lukumí, Tarot, and Orishas systems are not being equated. They remain culturally and theologically distinct. Functioning mapping rule correspondence is based on function, psychological, structural, ethical, not origin or hierarchy. Layer separation rules. All systems move through 4 levels. The 4 Worlds, which is my second book in Nola Voodoo Tarot. At Zeluth, Bria, Yetzira, and Asaya. At Zeluth, archetype, divine principle. Bria, structure, institution, design, sacred order. Yetzira, experience, emotion, psych, relational field. Asaya, manifestation, history, body, society, consequence. Non-totalization rule, no symbol, lure, or ritual archetype is fully contained by any single interpretation. The core movement of consciousness across all systems, one cycle repeats: construction, distortion, collapse, revelation, integration. Temples rise in psych, society, and spirit. Temples distort when power, fear, or illusion replaces truth. Temples collapse when contradiction becomes unsustainable. Revelation follows collapse. Integration rebuilds the structure at a higher level of awareness. The twin pillars of consciousness, because we just finished reading 1 Kings and dissecting 1 Kings before we go into 2 Kings. And across all my magic books, they talk about these twin pillars to the temple for the king of Solomon, which when we read the Testament of Solomon, he's using sorcery and demonology, geotial arts, to build the entire temple, okay? All right, the twin pillars of consciousness: Boaz, mercy, expansion, principle. Chesed, flow, expansion, care, protection. Correspondences: Orisha, Obatala, Lua, Egwa, Tarot. 4, stability of compassion. Lukumí, current, nurturing, order, and balance through care. Distortion: mercy without structure becomes dependency, overextension, or collapse of boundaries. Jachin, because the columns to the temples are Boaz and Jachin. Jachin, severity, boundary, principle. Jibara, discipline, limit, structure, correction. Correspondences: Orisha, Ogun, Lua, Agun. Tarot 5s, pressure, challenge, refinement. Lukumí, current, iron, discipline, ethical, containment, force of necessity. Distortion: severity without wisdom becomes domination, rigidity, and fear-based control. Neither pillar is complete alone. The temple stands only when both are aligned through truth. The 4 Worlds, how all systems move. At Zelith, divine archetype, pure principle before form. What is trying to emerge through reality? Bria, structure, institution, system, cosmologies. How does the principles become organized? Yetzira, emotional and psychic field, relationships, dream, trauma, and transformation. How is it experienced within consciousness? Asaya, material world, bodies, nations, histories, consequences, what becomes visible in time and space. The collapse sequence, core engines of transformation. This sequence appears across tarot, myth, and lived systems. The tower, known as deluge, false structural collapses, death, which is Les Morts, ending of inherited cycles, magician reversed, Dr. John, collapse of illusion, manipulation, distorted power, judgment, the ancestors, or Aeon, Aeon, ancestral reckoning, revelation, and accountability. The sun, gross bone orange, big angel, illumination without concealment, the world, carnival, integration, completion, wholeness. Low out currents of transformation, voodoo, Simbi, discernment, hidden knowledge, currents of truth, as really emotional truth, relational revelation, leg ball threshold, breaking access to change, Orisha currents, Lukumí, and Santería, Elegua, crossroads, initiation, choice, Shango, truth through fire, justice, and revelation, Oshun, emotional truth, restoration after collapse. These are not identical beings. These are parallel symbolic intelligences describing transformation through different cultural grammars. Why symbols repeat across civilizations? The question is no longer interpretation of systems. It is why do human beings across cultures generate the same symbolic architectures? The grammar of sacred form. Across civilizations, recurrent structures appear. Pillars, Boaz and Jashin, crossroads, Ilegwa, Legba, rivers, Oshun, Agui, currents, iron and fire, Ogun, Ogun, lightning and justice, Shango, Sango, waters and depth, Yimiya, currents, trees, temples, mountains, circles. These are not borrowings alone. These are repeated mappings of inner experiences onto outer form. Consciousness builds architecture. Consciousness does not passively observe reality. It constructs it symbolically. Memories become foundation. Trauma becomes enclosure. Desire becomes coordinator. Fear becomes gatekeeper. Insight becomes opening. The Loa, Orisha, and architects describe forces that move through these structures not as superstition, but as symbolic grammars of lived experience. Shared sacred geometry across traditions. Tree of Life, Medicine Wheel, Mandala, Labyrinth, Temple, Pyramid, Mountain, Circle. These are not competing cosmologies. These are translations of spatial thinking applied to consciousness itself. The universal narrative cycle. Every tradition represents the same arc. Departure, Ilegwa, Legba opens the roads. Trial, Ogun, Ogun, pressure, refinement. Collapse, Tower, deluge, rupture, witnessing, Simbi, discernment, return, Oshun, restoration, reconstruction, Obatala from stabilized in wisdom. This is not mythology alone. It is psychological architecture expressed culturally. The living temple. The final realization is not external. It is embodied. A living alignment of wisdom, justice, compassion, discernment, courage, and ethical responsibility. In this state, Boaz and Jason balance, Orisha currents harmonize, Loa movements are witnessed rather than feared, archetypes become conscious rather than controlling. The witness. Let's talk about the witness that took the picture. The temple archetype method proposes that all sacred systems, Kabbalah, Terra, Vodou, Lukumí, and others, are not competing authorities. They are parallel grammars of consciousness under transformation. The witness does not replace them. The witness observes how they move. When distortions arises, the witness seizes. When collapse comes, the witness holds clarity. When integration occurs, the witness recognizes wholeness. The temple is not entered, it is recognized, and once recognized, it is no longer outside consciousness, it is consciousness itself continuously under construction. Whew. There were several thoughts that came to mind as I was dissecting. We're going to call it dissecting. And I'm going to go through, I'm not going to read all this, but I am going to go through situations I thought of. I thought of the burning of Nottoway Plantation, May 2025. I thought of the two-alarm fire completely engulfing the 1928 English Manor Mansion in Washington, D.C. exclusive Talarama neighborhood. The residence of Navy Secretary John Phelan, which backs directly up to former President Barack Obama's home, May 20th, 2025. I thought of July 4th, the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture for this year. And this weekend, when I was talking to Brother God King Life, a small Caucasian baby, probably less than 2 years old, I was talking to him and I said, hold on, I got a visitor. And it was adorable baby, blonde hair. Her daddy was blue shirt, brown hair. He was in the book Owl, looking at some books, but she was looking through my glass window because I had a private room. And I guess it's not really private if it's got glass, but she stood there and she just kind of looked at me while I was talking to him. I said, hold on, I got somebody here. And I looked at her because she was there so long. And he came, he got her, he had her next to him, and the next thing you know, she was back. And so the next time, he grabbed her and scooped her up, and then went back to what he was doing. And a lot of thoughts crossed my mind in that instance. So we're going to talk about it. When things go wrong or violence looms, Black mothers have historically had to tell their children, white mothers too, if anything happens and I'm not around, look for an African American woman on the bus, in the store, on the street, because that is where safety, protection, and sanctuary have traditionally been found when the broader system fails. The profound irony that July 4th weekend is that the very people who spent the morning marching in masks to project dominance and intimidate ended up fleeing into a sanctuary built by, for, and about Black people. When the sky opened up and the lightning cracked, their ideology couldn't protect them from the elements. They had to run for cover into a space that holds the collective memory, strength, and protective shelter of the very community they had targeted. It proves a foundational truth that structures built out of Black resilience and survival are so inherently grounded, secure, and steady that even those who carry hate and end up relying on them for shelter when they are exposed and vulnerable. As far as for many white mothers or those who have colonizer consciousness, especially in the South or in working class communities, have given their children the exact same rule of survival. It speaks to a profound, unspoken recognition of where true safety, maternal protection, and grounding reside. Historically, Black women have been forced by circumstance to carry the weight of community care, survival logistics, and protective intuition, not just for their own families, but often for everyone around them. The irony of the storm on the National Mall comes full circle here. When those men were caught in the open, vulnerable and exposed, their ideological armor shattered. Their instinct, whether conscious or unconscious, led them straight to a monument dedicated to that exact spirit of sanctuary and enduring strength. When the world gets chaotic or dangerous, the human radar for shelter points to where the foundation is strongest. The same women who were exploited, beat, baby snatched, wet nursed, fed babies that grew up in the same household with colonizer consciousness mindset, dressed, swept the floors, tilled the field, while our baby may or may not be breathing. After this time, we are still sought for safety. And I knew it the moment that little cute blonde-haired girl under 2 years old came knocking at my library door. Now, if I had had time, I would have got down like Obama did with the little boy Jacob and had her touch my hair. Had she stayed a second longer, but her daddy hurried up and came and snatched her up. Now, generational memory muscle. For centuries, we are forced to be the anchors, the ultimate caretakers, the life givers, and the physical sanctuaries for a system that simultaneously dehumanized us, witnessing the very children who would grow up to inherit the same colonizer consciousness and enforce the whips and chains, to carry that unfathomable historical trauma and still be the energetic frequency that children of all races instinctively run toward for safety is a testament to a power that cannot be colonized, suppressed, or erased. It is a spiritual sovereignty. Because at 2 years old, children have not fully been conditioned by the rigid artificial structures of racial separation. They operate entirely on energy, vibration, and spirit. That little girl didn't see a stranger. Her spirit recognized a cosmic ancient safety. She put her hands on that glass because she was drawn to a foundational protective warmth that she could feel radiating through the room. And the father's silent, smiling, universal apology, picking her up real quick and waving his hand like, oh, I'm so sorry. He overstood. He recognized the sacredness of that uninterrupted gaze, the raw, pure connection between his child and a woman carrying an undeniable presence. And he knew that the only way to break that soul-level stare was to gently scoop her up and carry her into the next aisle. Touch, presence, and validation. History tried to break that connection by force, but moments like July 5th prove that the medicine, the sanctuary, because this happened on July 5th, right after, on my sister's birthday. It happened on July 5th, right after we had came from eating and right before I went home to open presents with the family and continued partying for the weekend. The medicine, the sanctuary, and the light that one person carries remains completely intact. The Philadelphia incident on SEPTA train, it was October 2021, actually, my fault, is the exact horrific proof that the world will still leave a black woman unprotected in a public space while a crowd of people watches for 40 minutes. As that train clicked through dozens of stops until a man harassed, cornered, and eventually assaulted her. The people around her, the ones who could have stepped in, who could have pushed an emergency button or simply dialed 911, did absolutely nothing. It is the dark side of that universal instinct. Society relies on the black woman to be the eternal sanctuary, the ground force, and the protector, but when she is the one in danger, when she is the one who needs a wall of safety around her, the system turns cold, desensitized, and blind. People pulled out their phones, they looked away, they chose their own comfort and distance over her humanity. And they are still doing it in 2026. The system's complete failure to return care it takes for granted. Okay. What I saw is a little girl, before she's old enough to learn the colonizer consciousness that tells people to look away, to ignore, or dehumanize a black woman's pain. Her raw human instinct recognized me as an anchor. Because hate must be taught. They're going to seek you because the medicine you carry is real even when the world fails to keep you safe in return. A little deep, just a little bit for today's lesson, but that ends the lesson for today. We're going to get started on the last spell. Yeah, that was deep enough for today. We can do this one tomorrow, along with 2 Kings 1 and 2. Say it's the 8th. Okay. Whew. Excuse me. All right. Spell number 27. I trust me with money. I did not bring it, but I did try to figure out how long dollars stay with persons in each community. But I did not print it. So I'll have to print that for tomorrow. See if I can get an estimate. how long it stays. There we go. Which leads to spell number 27. I trust me with money. Notes on this spell: some of us must overcome our fear of handling larger and larger amounts of money. We may not trust self, or we may fear the added responsibility wealth requires. This spell is for reprogramming these money deterrents. Write the statements on plain white paper that you will dispose of. Step 1. Decide that you are a money and wealth master. Step 2, meditate for 20 minutes in your sacred space or in nature or any space where you feel safe. Step 3, pray. Ask to remember any and all instances where you received a large amount of money and it was gone too fast, or you think you spent unwisely, or you're still harboring regret for not using any large amounts of money you've received to better your life. Keep your eyes closed and listen for the answer. Woo, child. Step 4. As each instance flashes across the screen of your consciousness, write out the whole scene on plain paper, then write after each scene in large writing. That was then, this is now. I release the past. I totally and completely trust myself now. Step 5, feel the feelings of confidence in yourself. Handling large amounts of money and vast wealth. Know you are a wealth master. All right, some things came to my mind as I was reading this. Reverend Love has a book called Charge More. I left an Amazon review. The book is absolutely fabulous. She used it for one of her mastermind classes. It is a one to add to the collection. Okay. Money and Wealth Master. Become Your Own ATM. Books I thought of as well: 40-Day Prosperity Plan by John Randolph. Fabulous book. Oh, yes. We may need to do 40 days with that one once I have some things accomplished. far as books. Places you feel safe. Watching the lightning bugs, playing at the park, going to the beach, sitting on the porch. Places where you feel safe. If you need to, at your job after you get off work, typing it up on the computer before you go home. Yeah, that's how I finished a few books actually. Staying over after work and just utilizing whatever skills I could in time, because I'm already up, I'm already working, I'm already alert. You got to wind down after you worked anyway. I was the only one there, so besides the security guard, I just stayed over, typed whatever I wanted to, and went home. All right. I had we had did a session on wealth mastery. I'll have to see if I can find that in my emails. It was a declaration, and I didn't remember it until I was reading this with you all right now, but I think it would be helpful if I could find it, so I'll look for that. All right. This has been absolutely scrumptious. Thank you so much for taking your time with me today. I greatly appreciate you. And it is hump day. I hope you're happily humping. Baby, get it how you feel. Get it how you live it. Yes, indeed. I'm about to go hump these keys and type up the Substack and the Skip article and work on some other things since it's hump day. And I hope you have a marvelous rest of your day. Mwah.